So the fifth and last violation of Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is when individuals choose mates rather than random mating. So random mating would mean that every other individual has just as much chance of being your mate as any other individual. And that is definitely not how it's typically done. Sexual selection is actually a type of natural selection, and it's when we choose to mate with individuals based on their characteristics. So intelligence, what they look like, other things like that. This is a result typically of sexual dimorphism. So sexual dimorphism is physical differences between the sexes, between what is typically considered male and what is typically considered female. Granted, there's a lot of variation along that continuum, but if somebody's very masculine or very feminine, you can typically determine their sexual identity. So intrasexual is competition amongst the same sex. So this would be like two males fighting for the attention of a female. Intra means within, so within the same sex. Intersexual selection is when one sex chooses from the other sex. So this would be like what we see in the peacock example up in the top. So the peacock is the male bird, and they're very showy. They're very blue. They have these huge tail feathers that they plume up and then they dance around for the female. And then the female, the peahen, is on the right, and they're pretty drab. They're very brown. They don't have these big tail feathers. And so intersexual selection, what's typically going to happen is the females are the choosy ones, and so the males tend to be the very pretty, flashy ones. But if you think about a peacock, it doesn't make sense to have these gigantic plumes in an evolutionary sense. So imagine trying to run away from a predator. You're already wobbling on land. You can't really fly because this bird is huge and your giant feathers are weighing you down. You have this gigantic tail you're carrying behind you. You're just not going to be very good at escaping from a predator. However, there's the idea that the benefit that having this big flashy tail gives you in sexual selection actually outweighs the disadvantage in natural selection. So because the females are going to pick you more often, you're going to actually be more fit because you're going to be able to reproduce more frequently and give your genetics to the next generation more frequently than if you didn't have it and were just able to get away from predators. So keep in mind that natural selection is never going to make a perfect organism. This is not the process where you get to go back to the drawing board and play God and make something absolutely perfect. It only acts on existing variation. These are limited by constraints. Typically, if you're going to be skinny and fast, you're going to give up some kind of bulk and muscle mass. If you want to be really strong and bulky, you're going to give up some speed. So evolution and natural selection is always kind of a compromise. And there's always the fact that chance and natural selection are going to interact, right? Just because you've got a trait that would be really great in one environment, but you're not in that environment, by that chance, it's maybe not going to be very adaptive for you. You've got to be the right shape in the right place for the adaptation to be selected for.